We've never done a podcast before. It's been something that we've wanted to do since we started the business, but we just haven't got around to it. We haven't had the time, and we haven't really had any major news to announce until now. And today I'm excited to announce that we've hired our very first managing director. And it's someone who's helped shape the industry long before Revo was even an idea. He's got 3 decades of experience. He's respected well across the board, and he's also my dad. So I'm pleased to announce Steffan, welcome to the business, and pleased to appoint you as our new managing director. How are you going today?
Yeah, good, thanks, Lane. Really excited to be doing this podcast and also coming on board with Revo.
Have you ever done a podcast before?
No, never.
Okay, neither have I. Well, that makes 2 of us.
A couple of webinars and that's about it.
I'm sure that'll pay dividends. Well, look, before we sort of get into the story of how you've, obviously come on board and are joining Revo, I guess I kind of want to wind the clock back. I'm sure there'll be a few people out there that know you, have worked with you in the past, kind of know your story, know your origin, but I kind of want to wind it back for those that don't know. How did you sort of get into packaging and where did your career sort of kick off?
Well, it started back in the late 90s, actually. Started working for a company called WR Grace, and then literally within a couple of weeks, I was working for a company called Cryovac because the name changed. And then about a year and a half later, it was Sealed Air Cryovac or Cryovac Sealed Air, how just as different companies merged, working as a printer. My father-in-law, your grandfather, of course, printer by trade. So I started working at the same company as he did. And that's sort of where it all started from there, just on the tools, getting amongst it.
When you say printing, what did that look like to you when you very first started?
Oh, when I first started, it was just literally a temporary role for the peak season. So that was sort of doing 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. So pretty big numbers, big hours. So 72 hours a week sort of through the summer months. So it was pretty full on. And then they sort of said that they were looking to change their roster system to a 4x4 roster, similar to a fireman's roster. And that they needed, I think it was 2 new people, and they were going to actually offer 2 apprenticeships as well. So I actually got offered an apprenticeship to do my printing trade. And I just thought this is awesome. So I just went for it and
So when you say printing as well, tell us more about the sort of products and the sort of the print process that you're involved with. Did Grandad kind of take you under his wing, or did he sort of just give you an opportunity and sort of throw you in the deep end with it?
Oh, so he gave me the opportunity to work for it, and then I actually got thrown on a different shift so that we weren't working together when it sort of changed over, and then back to working on the same shift was a bit different how they did it. I was just a press assistant, so working on a flexible CIC drum, so that's a continuous print cylinder. So printing on plastic, so primarily shrink bags for the New Zealand shrink industry, a little bit for offshore as well, but mainly shrink bags and films.
And when we talk about printing in that sense, it's an actual trade, isn't it?
Yeah. Flexography. So got my trade in flexography, reel fed printing. So it's continuous reel versus different ways of doing it. And we were printing up to 8 colours in the end. So originally when I first started, we only had 6 colour presses, but then we went up to 8 colours. And now, of course, you've got presses that do 12 colours, so that's just as technology advances, things change.
So does the printing.
So does the printing, gets more high-tech. And now, you used to be able to tell the difference between flexography and gravure printing, which is sort of similar but different. But now the advances in flexography with the different types of plate materials and all of that sort of stuff, unless you've got a trained eye, you can hardly tell the difference in it. And, of course, now there's also a lot more photographic printing, which sort of was only sort of starting back then. When I was first in there, it wasn't a huge amount, but now, of course, it's on most packaging, you'll see it's got photographic imagery versus standard old line colours.
And how long did you work in the print space for? When we're talking about the trade, is it the typical sort of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years that we see in other trades, or is it a quicker process to get your qualification? How long did you spend in that side of the business? Yeah,
it was actually quite interesting. So I started on the old trade scheme, but then as New Zealand changed their qualifications, I actually moved into the new trade scheme. So I started on a trades basis, then went to an NZQA basis. And that was sort of like transition within a few months. So it was just the way it went with that. And so it ended up taking me 3.5 years to complete my trade. I actually did it quite quickly. Some people take longer, and there has been cases of people doing it quicker as well. So it's just as you can advance through your papers and then do your block courses and the actual on-press testing where guy comes, test you, make sure you're printing properly and
of course
doing all of that stuff. So
kind of a combination of it being self-directed with how quickly you can progress, but also what opportunities present itself on the factory floor to actually tick off the criteria.
Yep. And you have multiple papers. You got to do all the papers. You got to do all the training yourself and all that. Versus, because the first one I did, I went to a block course, and then after that, it actually was then all self-taught with a big manual book all sent out to you, and then the guy coming on site a couple of times through the process every year. Yeah, so it was a bit sort of like a mixed one in that transition period of New Zealand changing its ways of doing apprenticeships.
So how long did you work in printing? Obviously, you said 3 or 4 years to get the ticket.
Yep.
How long after that did you actually continue to work in the space before you were sort of approached or looked to exit and venture into the sales aspect of the business?
So I actually worked in printing, I think it was for 4.5 years. And then I actually transitioned before moving into sales. I actually went into the conversion department. So we manufacture the bags. So going from the printed tubing into making the bags. And that was sort of a transition that I'd worked on with the boss of sales at the time, the New Zealand director of sales, where I'd sort of highlighted that I wanted to move into sales. So he said, yes, but you need some more experience. And with the business I was working for, they used to have a cadetship program where you used to go around all the different areas, but they'd stopped that as well. But he thought that was a good segue to actually get into sales. So he actually understood the background of the business. So I sort of moved into that role, into conversion. And funnily enough, literally the guy that I took over from, he resigned on a Wednesday morning, came and handed in his notice. And literally that afternoon, I got asked if I still wanted to do the sales job. And I said, yeah, why not? And they said, sweet, you start on Monday.
Wow,
and that was it.
Talk about a quick turnaround, huh?
And then Friday afternoon, I was literally given car keys, a list of all the customers, and a computer, which I'd never really worked on before, and said, see you Monday morning. There's just a Subaru outside, off you go.
And the need to go and get a shirt and sort of change the way that you dress from going from the factory floor to the the boardroom essentially.
It was, yeah. And it was all ties, shirt and ties back then as well. So, it was a little bit different.
Talk me through the motivation from, going from a trade into a sales role, because it's quite a shift, right? Not just in skill set, but in what your day-to-day looks like and the schedule in which you work. Was it something that you thought about for quite a long time? Were you sort of getting past the point of, reaching the pinnacle of printing and you wanted more of a challenge? Or what was the motivation behind changing?
I guess I'd actually been lucky in my role working there. Well, lucky, because I actually played rugby at the same time and broke my arm a couple of times and just different things. And I was actually, in the off season, I was actually managing a whole lot of customer complaints and catch up for that because I had a broken wrist. So it was through the winter months when we were quieter printing, and that sort of led to dealing directly with clients of the business. And then when clients had come up to do site visits, again, they'd come in winter when they're quieter as well. I ended up managing those and taking them around the full production process through. So not just the press, which it was originally, but I'd actually started to learn all around the whole business. So I was taking those guys through extrusion and all of that and just explaining everything to them. And so that's sort of where I started to deal with clients and actually obviously started meeting then the sales managers, sales reps and stuff like that for the business. And there's sort of like, I thought, yeah, this would be quite a different segue. And I sort of said, yeah, I'd love to do that. But it just happened so fast with this other guy resigning, which was sort of hardly ever happened in that because everyone was long-termers.
So it sounds like the transition was organic in a way that you were already sort of naturally finding some of the job, and then it just so happened that with the abrupt and prompt resignation of the current person they had in that role, it just sort of opportunity landed in your lap, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
And you had to just say, it's now or never.
Yeah. And it was like, it was a big change, all of a sudden going from working shift work to Monday to Friday, and having weekends off was great. And getting a free car. Who doesn't love a free car?
Fuel card too?
Yeah, fuel card as well.
Yeah, amazing.
It was exciting when you're a young fella.
And so you're in the sales role now, and you've obviously got that technical, sound background knowledge.
Yep.
Like, how quickly did it take you to get, wins on the board? Because a lot of people sort of jump into sales roles or they change sales roles from one industry to another. And I think, the catalyst for success really relies in with the, the technical sound background knowledge of just knowing the products, knowing the process. Like, did you take to it, fairly quickly and quicker than, your superiors expected of you?
I think I did. But that, I guess, was around also having a lot of key people around me and people that could train and show me different aspects of the industry. So like I had in printing with valuable mentors as such in the roles, I actually had the same in the sales roles with the business because they had long-term, as I said before, they had long-term people working there. So they were able to take me around and show me. And I remember partnering up with different places and going around different meat plants, being trained on all the cuts, so you can see the meat coming down, exactly what cut it was. And then the same with going into the dairy side of it with the business, they touched all industries across New Zealand. So I was actually very lucky to be able to go into multiple plants all around the country, whether it be from cereal, meat, dairy, just packing legumes, packing vegetables, all sorts of stuff, and just luckily enough to be able to go into all those different places. And I guess in regards to like the sales roles as well, it was more relationship management, because you had to build relationships. I spent time in rooms in the plants, be there at 6 a.m. on site. A couple of plants, I had my own overalls, gumboots, all of that sat in the back. I had my black gumboots for going to the potato plants, potato farms and stuff like that over the Wairarapa. There's an access card to the door, so it was quite different being able to do that sort of stuff.
So I guess having that exposure early on really sort of laid the foundations for, the successful path you found yourself on. Would you say like nowadays that approach would take a lot longer, like trying to get exposure to some of those sort of sectors and industries, just being able to walk in and, would you say there's a lot more red tape now to sort of have to go, work with?
Oh, 100%.
Just to get in the room?
Just to get in the room is quite difficult these days, just with all the health and safety requirements, with what training's needed. And it's not that things were a lot more lax back then. I think it was just was the way it was, and people had time, because I guess there's more people doing different roles in that, and now a lot of people are time poor. We had to travel around. There was no cell phones coverage in a lot of the areas, and we'd go to different places so we could borrow their fax machines to put orders in. So the guy I was with could and that's how he'd always done it,
Yeah, wow.
Because it's just the way things were done. Computers were only just sort of coming into that use full on. Mobile access was horrible,
It wasn't quite mainstream.
No, not
As
like
we know
now. Yeah.
You've also worked in, in-house for brands, mainly, meat and CPG product companies, and, you work with the supermarkets and, all about merchandising and selling a product into stores.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that experience, how you sort of came to find yourself in those types of roles. And, you've kind of seen the full cycle, haven't you, from obviously manufacturing and making, packaging, through to seeing how the product's packed on the factory floor, and you've obviously sold it into stores. Talk a little bit about that process, just from concept through to shelf, and again, like going from the trade to the sales side, how you sort of found yourself in that space.
Yeah, I guess again, I was lucky in the fact that I decided that I wanted to shift from where we lived at the time. And decided, right, at the time thought I'm done with the packaging industry. I want to try something different. And I had a client that I'd worked with for years previously, and they said to me, "Hey, look, come and work for us. We've got this big project going on. You can help get that all set up," which was installing a couple of machines and sorting out all the materials for that. And so I thought, yeah, I'll jump at it. And then sort of as that finished, they're like, "Hey, do you want to keep working for us?" Moving into like a sales role, dealing with the supermarkets, dealing with one of the supermarkets' head offices. And I was like, yeah, I could enjoy that. And it's actually really different. It's actually like quite, I guess, refreshing and understanding and seeing how things were done from the other side of it. Whereas, having always just sold packaging to these guys, but then looking at it, how it all worked and what they sold to the supermarkets, working on what their sort of requirements were and understanding their marketing process. Because there's a couple of projects I worked on with those guys with new product launches and stuff. It was actually quite different to see it all, but it gave you like fresh eyes looking at it from then. When I moved back into packaging, I sort of understood it more, and I had that mindset change of it by just seeing how this was done, because it's like a unique opportunity that not many people get. And I worked for a company for about 3 years, I think it was, around about, and looking after a head office, but also then helping reps on the road, going into looking at stuff through stores and understanding that, working with a merchandising company. It was pretty cool, actually, just to see it from all different avenues and give a sort of like a whole view of the process.
Yeah, and I suppose, like you said before, being able to experience, all parts of the journey, from like packaging through to packing through to getting it on the, the shelf in the supermarket, you're able to sort of get insight into how that process and how the supermarkets actually influence packaging, whether it's materials or format or how high or wide something needs to be, and even just experiencing what it takes and what hoops, brands have to jump through just to get their product, on the shop floor. So what would you say, in your opinion, is like the biggest misconception about, getting a product stocked in store? Because we know there's a ton of brands out there that want to do it. Some have already probably gone through the process. Some have maybe been denied. Some have maybe been delisted. Like, what would you say, in your professional opinion, biggest misconception?
If it tastes good, it will sell. I think that's what a lot of people, and if you can commercially make it to still taste the same, you might have the best product that you make at your restaurant, your little store, what have you, that you're selling over the counter, but going to that commercial size as well, are these products available to process commercially and manufacture that way? And will it actually taste good still after you process it that way? And will it actually sell? And the other thing as well is, is the packaging right for the product? And by that I mean, does it actually fit on the shelf? Because the supermarkets are not going to change the size of their shelf to suit your product. Your product needs to fit within what they're doing.
So that kind of highlights the real need to go in and sort of road test and take your tape measure with you in and like sort of look at your category and go like, where do we sit here? Because you don't necessarily get to choose maybe where you go or if you're up high or down low. So it's trying to sort of come up with something that's malleable, I guess, and can adapt to a variety of positions, right? Yeah.
But also it doesn't matter, you might get into a local supermarket, but it doesn't mean that it's going to go nationally as well. And another one that I also find that people feel is just because it's locally sourced or organic does not mean it's going to sell everywhere. Sometimes that is a misconception. People feel that, because I've got a locally sourced product, I'm going to be able to sell it everywhere. But it doesn't mean that it is.
Yeah, that's
You've got to understand it, work with the right people, and make sure that your product fit is right. And even once you're in the supermarket, it doesn't mean it's going to stay there, because if it doesn't have the sell-through, they will delist you on the each cycle. They have delisting of places. So that 13-week cycles, 4 of those a year, where there's new products come in, go, it's got to sell.
I guess your response just there in a nutshell just highlights the amount of work that has to be done across the board, in a number of ways to obviously mitigate that risk or, try and do what you can to enhance the product and have the brand tell the story and obviously try and get people to buy it and engage with it. And, if it, like you said, if it tastes good, that's the last piece, right? Because that's what the consumer's going to have when they actually, take the product home and they open it. That'll be kind of the last sort of thought on their mind. Yeah,
there's multiple boxes to tick to get it to last and be a solid product in the stores. And there are products that are just, they're the unicorns that just go and they just, they start small, they taste great, they're everything, and they just go nationally, listed nationally across the supermarket chains and gone, versus a few stores here and there and struggling away. But, it all comes down to how it all works, how the brand works. If the consumers embrace it, comes down as well your marketing around it, the packaging that you use, the story you're telling, as you said. There's just so many factors that come into it.
I suppose in recent years, you've been running your own consulting business, SMP, off the back of an illustrious career in the packaging industry, and you've also been studying towards your MBA at Otago University. What motivated you to go back and study after all these years of really knowing what you're doing and being respected in your role and in your field to sort of go back and look at business from another lens?
Well, it was more about understanding business on a deeper level. So with the MBA, it's looking at like across all avenues of business, not just what I actually knew. So understanding how to run my company properly, understanding marketing and strategies, people, culture, just all of those sort of aspects all together. Getting more insight into accounting, more insight into economics, supply and demand, everything all across it. And part of the reason as well is I had a 1-year restrained trade. So I decided why not use this time valuably, because I could not sell into the industry. So I thought, why not just try and make the most of this time? But also just because if you're not learning, you're sort of staying still. So you've always got to be learning. So I thought, time's right.
What surprised you the most about, being at uni?
The hard work that it is. The amount of reading for the MBA that I have to do, it's like quite a lot. And it's still ongoing, so I've still got a bit of time to go on it. And it's full on. But it's rewarding. It's, meeting some great people, learning some amazing things about just understanding in more depth into how businesses operate, function, the legal side of it, understanding around about, just business laws and stuff is quite interesting. It's great.
And do you feel like, just in the time that you've been doing the MBA, you're applying so much of it already, or is it more just because, you're obviously still going through the process of getting the qualification? Is it more just giving you perspective, or have you already noticed things that you've adapted in your approach and how you sell and how you conduct yourself as a business owner? Yeah,
actually, it's sort of like a combination, because some stuff, I guess with my business or with SMP Consulting, dealing with businesses, it's sort of, some of it is impactful, some of it I need to use, and I've noticed that I need to make these changes to how I do things from a legal standpoint, as well as just to do business better. But then some things at the moment, I've just been sort of holistically looking at them and getting better across the board because I don't actually have the need to use it as yet. But now with this role that I'm stepping into with Revo, there's a lot more that I know that I will be applying and more coming up as I learn more as well, so that I'll be able to put into the business.
Given you've worked in the industry across a variety of roles, how have you really seen the packaging industry change? And obviously we know that sustainability is probably what comes to, top of the list. But yeah, in your opinion, like what have you really noticed?
Yeah, sustainability is probably the last thing, the biggest thing, I guess, not the last thing. Probably in the last 5 to 7 years, people looking at reducing plastic use and stuff like that, that seems to have really kicked off. But across that time, it's sort of, there's always been evolving, as I said, around about the formats. Stand-up pouches as an example. You never used to have a stand-up pouch, and you see those a lot on the stores, and now they've got 4-side seal pouches, 8-side seal pouches, all of the sort of format changes. The way products are presented, shape pouches, spouted pouches, none of those sort of things really existed previously when I first started in the role. So that technology is advanced. Technology advances around the shelf life of products, how chilled shrink bags work, things like that. It keeps advancing, and the artwork and all of that's just gone next level as well, digital printing and all of that sort of stuff. None of that was there. Different closure systems. But yeah, 100% sustainability is the biggest thing over the last few years.
And sustainability obviously is a big one. Are we doing enough as suppliers, as an industry, as customers? I mean, I know that's a very general question, but what comes to mind for you when you hear that?
Yeah, well, the supermarkets are pushing it quite strongly in regards to material changes to make sure they do suit to be recyclable. But they can be recycled or downcycled into other products. But reality is we actually need to be doing more so that the products can actually be recycled for reuse. We can't get rid of plastics, and this is the biggest thing that people think, we just get rid of it. But you think about how New Zealand works as a country, and I guess there's a lot of countries around the world with the products that they export. If you had to change them to a different format, would you still be able to export them if they weren't packed in plastics? If you think about New Zealand, it's the meat industry, the dairy industry. So everyone looks at milk powder. They might say our milk powder looks like it's in a paper bag, in the 25 kilo paper bags or 20 kilo paper bags. But inside those is plastic linings, that are specialised to suit the product that's packed inside them to ensure they have a long shelf life. So you'd end up with a lot more food waste. And I think that's the biggest thing there that people miss in packing food, is that the packaging is the best that we've got available at the moment to suit the product. And it does extend the shelf life, so we have less food waste. Because if you had a massive amount of food waste, if New Zealand couldn't export its dairy or meat products, they're two of the biggest earners for our country. So we'd be in a lot of trouble. And that's probably the same for multiple countries around the world with different products that they do.
We've seen lots of alternatives get, launched in the marketplace.
Yep.
Plant-based, fibre-based, oxo-degradable packaging. Various types of solutions that have various end-of-life processes. But there seems to be a lack of infrastructure. Like why is that? I kind of speak to it from the lens of, it feels like there's too many people at the party but not enough seats.
Yeah, yep. You talk about fibre as a fine point. A lot of fibre, so paper-based products, they actually have they create more carbon, etc. They're using more resources to manufacture than the plastic bag does. But yes, plastic is taken from fossil fuels. So but your carbon footprint might be different. But you got to think about the product that's inside it. Now, if you think about a leg of ham, for example, it's a $100 piece of meat that's inside a $1 plastic bag. So what do you really want to do? You want to make sure that $1 plastic bag is perfect.
It has to work.
It has to work, because or else you're going to throw away a $100 piece of meat, and you think about all the water, all the food, all the energy that's gone in to do that. So this is where, you've got to look at it from that point of view. But then as you mentioned other materials as well. So like compostable, oxidegradable, et cetera, you've got to make sure that all of these products actually do have their right processing stream that allows them to be processed properly. So compostable, like all of these materials all have their place, but we don't have the infrastructure behind them. And so you look at like some of the supermarkets or the Food and Grocery Council in New Zealand as well, they said, not for now was how they adapted it, and that's been adopted by the supermarkets as well. So with their working group they had at the Food and Grocery Council, they said for compostables, not for now, right? And the reason for that is because if compostable gets in with the soft plastics, when people recycle it, if they're not doing the right thing, it ends up impacting those soft plastics, because then they can't be used.
About contamination.
Yeah, it's contamination. You think about meat trays, for example, all change to clear, but then people still don't clean them properly, and then that means that bale's contaminated. They don't take off the top lidding film, then it's contaminated, and then that product gets downgraded. So the recyclers then go, okay, we used to get I don't know the numbers, but just say $4 a kilo for it. And now because it's degraded, we've got to ship it overseas and we only get $1 a kilo for it. So it's not worth it, but we've got all this product, or we'd send it to landfill. So it's also consumer education, and that could be a missing part as well. So, more infrastructure, more consumer education around what to actually do with these products to ensure they actually get into the right places.
Like I think I touched on before, and I think you added some great depth to that. A solution's only good as its end-of-life process, right? So if there's no infrastructure to help dispose of that product, does it just end up in landfill? Does it require more resources and, things like that to, manufacture it in the first place? And then, leading on to probably the biggest thing is, shelf life. Does it help the food for the same amount of time that the plastic solution did? These are all things to be considered, right, when choosing, what solution is best for my packaging. So it's not just a one size fits all. There's many things to consider with these alternatives. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And it is just one of those, it is one of those things that we, in New Zealand, for example, we actually struggle because of the size that we are, population and just depth and breadth of the country. How do we get those solutions? How do you get those products back? You think about soft plastics as an example, which is, what Revo sells, primarily being flexible packaging. In Australia, they've been successful with their Kirby trials and getting the soft plastics back. But again, they had a lot of troubles with what went on with the previous recyclers of all the product and all of that. So there's all of that. So in New Zealand, we've got processes there to get these products in, but it's not across the whole country. And again, that's logistics to get those products back to where they are processed. And it's also making sure that there's enough users of those products. Fantastic products are made by Future Post of those recycled products, but is there enough users? Yes, there's quite a few, but there could be more. But there could also be a lot more products recycled because we're not getting the full gambit of what everyone uses, because people are people, and sometimes they're just lazy to do the right thing with the product.
Yeah, and I suppose it's hard when the responsibility is put on the consumer to bring their soft plastics back to store. I mean, you mentioned the Kirby trial that we've seen rolled out in Australia, and that seems to be yielding some great results. But I think it's like coming back to that question on where do we need to sort of see investment, or where does the focus need to be on? It's on that infrastructure, right? It's like, how can we make it easier for the consumers to be able to dispose of and repurpose their soft plastics in a way where we make it a no-brainer for them, where it becomes natural, it becomes part of their daily habit.
Yeah, and I guess it is habit for some people, and it's just getting that education across to everybody so that they all do it. And it's really hard because the organisations that look after it, Packaging Forum, Soft Plastics New Zealand, they're funded by members, and the members are people that are using packaging.
Yeah,
it's not compulsory, so it does make it hard. There is works, that are going on in the background around levies and stuff on plastic usages and all of that to try and to be able to fund all the infrastructure. But it's just hard work, and it's getting everybody's buy-in to actually do the right thing. I guess it happened with recycling. We all have recycle bins now, and everybody uses them. So I guess it will just continue to grow and grow and grow.
So, joining Revo as our new managing director, why Revo? Why now?
With Revo, I see a lot of potential with the way the business has been set up by yourself. Again, it's just a great business model. I think it works really well, and I just see so much potential with it, and the choices that you give and the way that you've set it up is just amazing, to be honest. I mean, I may be a little bit biased because you're my son, but still, I do think that the business model is fantastic, and there is, what it offers to your clients. the ability to save a lot of money, be more sustainable in the way they operate as a business is huge. And that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I came up with the concept, like Revo was about like revolutionizing packaging in New Zealand essentially. And I guess I just had this burning desire to kind of flip the industry on its head from having worked in various packaging businesses and kind of seeing how it was all unfolding. I think to me, it kind of felt like there was a lot of people sort of saying, we need to make change, we need to do it now, but it was all sort of all talk and no walk, I guess you could say. And that's why I sort of came up with the idea. I was like, it seems to be that there's a lack of infrastructure, and to get the infrastructure that's needed and the innovation, we need investment behind it. And investment is obviously money. And where's that money going to come from?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the, main biggest suppliers probably aren't, too privy to doing much in that space. And so I sort of thought, how can I sort of take money from the consumer and utilize some of that to maybe look to fund some of this infrastructure?
Yeah.
And that's where I sort of came up with the idea, well, if I was able to offer, customers, clients, businesses, brands access to buy their packaging for cost, which would obviously, heavily decrease their bottom line, then I could implement, a plastic tax as part of our business offering,
Yep.
which we would, accrue over the, year-to-date period. And obviously our clients and consumers would be, in charge of where they'd like to allocate that money. And that was just all to sort of foster the conversation around what does a plastic tax look like, and can we actually charge people for utilising plastic in their business if it's absolutely imperative, but utilise that 2% portion to hopefully fund some of this innovation. And that was kind of what I always wanted to do, was entice people with low-priced packaging,
Yep.
not to get that confused with cheap packaging, because the quality is still there. It's just the best possible price. And I think that's what afforded us to be able to, implement that 2%. So thinking back on when I sort of, came to you with the concept of like a
Yep.
cost price packaging business model, like what were your honest thoughts at the time? Like thinking back on it now when I maybe first, threw it your way, you can be honest.
Yeah. Well, I remember you did first bring it to me, and I just thought, this is never going to fly. It won't work. With the way that generic business works in the packaging industry, it's the first subscription-based model that I've tried to find research that I can find in the packaging industry, offering your packaging for good plastic tax. Again, something unique. And when you brought all of this to me, there's no chance that consumers or clients or buyers or whatever it is in New Zealand would go for it. And especially with the way that it operates with, your subscription, either annually, monthly, payment up front for your packaging, and you take all of your stock on. We're working with the traditional packaging houses that some places they do it like that with the payment up front, depending on who the client is, or it's payment on the 20th following after delivery, or you're getting split delivery because they're carrying stock. And I guess that's all part of the reason how you've been able to manage to offer the cheaper packaging as well, is because you've not got all of that cost of all of that in there.
Exactly.
And it's the open model as well. And to be honest, I didn't think that people would take it, whether they had the room for the product or they just wanted to spend that much up front.
I think part of it too was not really having a choice to do it any way other than the way that Revo's been built, because, you look at a traditional packaging company, and I know I've referred to your experience in the industry over the past 30 years. The traditional packaging supplier has kind of done business the same it has for the last 50 or so years. The supply model hasn't changed. And so when I sort of thought about, starting this business, I thought there's no way I can invest and compete with these businesses on the same playing field as them. It would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars just to make, manufacture and store, packaging solutions, not to mention the overheads for having a 3PL or a physical location, staff to manage the day-to-day. Keep in mind at the time when I, started the business, I was, still working for another company in a 9-to-5. So in a way it was organic, and that how the business kind of unfolded, but it was kind of like a way for me to start it with, very low overheads and very low investment costs. And I think, that's kind of paid dividends in a way, because it's laid the foundation for how we do things now. And I guess while we are a remote business, we don't have huge overheads. We've got no storage, no 3PL, no sort of day-to-day physical locations, that's what allows us to be able to drive this cost price packaging models, because unlike our competitors who are storing stock in various locations, physical places of work tend to, cost a lot of money. And that's something we've been able to avoid, but also have it play, in our favour too.
Yeah, well, the way you've done it, you've got your digital footprint, and, you're also reducing the footprint of the product getting to the customers. Instead of having it come ship into Auckland, Wellington, Tauranga or Napier or wherever it comes into for the port, and then sitting there and then going off to back to wherever, sitting in a warehouse in Auckland, sitting in a warehouse in Hamilton, and then being shipped out weekly in little bits and bobs, it stops all of that as well. So you think about the actual impact you're having there on the infrastructure and the amount of trips that the product's taking, it's reducing that. So that's another sort of side of it. But yeah, going back to when you first, I just didn't think it would fly at all, because I just thought people won't want to pay for it up front and have all of that stock, especially when places don't have, like a lot of places don't have large storage facilities as well. And you're sort of thinking, some of these products that they, it might be, that they use a pallet of product every month, so then they go, actually, we're going to buy 3 or 4 months. So it's like 3 or 4 pallet spaces that they need to fill. And sometimes they just don't have that. But from what you've done and the work you've sort of landed already, it's working. So credit to you.
So with that in mind, what are the barriers for business when it comes to adopting like the Revo cost price packaging business model?
Well, literally,
in a nutshell.
Yeah, as I said, the same reasons that I said that I didn't think it was going to work. When you first mentioned it way back when, it was sort of like it's cash flow, whether you've got the cash to pay for it up front, but then offering the discount, not the discount, the cost price packaging actually may offset that, because you're sort of saving that point from anywhere from 20 to 40% on their packaging. And in some cases, from what you've told me, it's even more. From what clients have told you, they're saving even more than that. So there's that. There's the cash flow side of it, whether they can afford to pay for it up front. And the other side, as I said, as well, is storage. And that's sort of where it all comes down to. It's whether the stock that they're going to need is going to last that long enough. It's a plain stock line that they use. They might go, hey, I don't want to go and buy 5 months worth of stock when I can just buy it every second week off the different suppliers because they have it off the shelf. So it could be that sort of style thing as well. And I guess as we turned about talking about the retailers on those 13-week cycles, if they haven't got a good product that's going for it, maybe that's a risk for them as well.
Talk about sustainability and transparency from the lens of, stepping into the role with Revo, and also from the perspective of like materials, manufacturing, product stability and suitability. Like what do you think sets Revo apart when we talk about transparency and sustainability?
Well, I think it's the main key aspect there is that we discuss with the clients the product that they want to pack and the right suitable product for it, instead of going, we have this off the shelf that will suit your product. But we actually go, hold on, we can make it to suit. So the way that Revo is nimble enough, and the suppliers that you've worked with to pick up and get going, you can actually work with them to make the product to suit. So selecting the right materials, and you also tell the client what those materials are. So you're not trying to hide anything with any magic dust over this is a specialized code 1, 2, 3, 4 that we supply. You're actually telling them what the product is, which is unique because nobody does that.
Yeah, I suppose it's unheard of. I mean, I even reflect on my own experience working in packaging roles prior to Revo. It was always considered IP, intellectual property, the structures around certain material. And in a way, it is. That's what you have a dedicated quality and supply team for that help define those structures. But I think there was just like another element of what I wanted to add to the business where I truly believe that we are giving people the best possible solution, and we're giving them the cheapest possible price. And in a way, I kind of thought there's nothing to hide here, because if I give away the IP to a customer once they come on board to Revo and they're a paying subscriber, they're a customer, they're settled into how we do things as a business. I share all that information with the clients because there's no fear that they're gonna utilize that information and go direct to China and try and get a better price, because it really is cost price packaging. So even if they were to go direct, they may actually find that the price is actually more expensive because they're sort of bypassing someone that's got those relationships, that has an understanding of, market pricing and knowledge and things like that. So Yeah, in a way, it was kind of like, how much of an open book can we be just to build credibility with our customers and also bring them on that journey of like teaching them about what's in their packaging? Because I think, I talk to a lot of customers and they have an idea of what the packaging is made of, but they don't know, the ideal makeup and whether it's laminated or co-extruded. And these are just all sorts of things I really wanted to tie into the experience, working with these businesses, is actually educating them on, the materials being used to really tie it into recyclability and the conversation we had around, sustainability. Because I think awareness is a huge thing that we need to drive, and I just don't think there's enough of it. I think there's a real lack of knowledge, and I think that really stops people from making, informed decision making where packaging is concerned.
Yeah, well, a lot of businesses will just say that their products are recycle ready or they are recyclable, but you don't actually know the breakup of it. And so that's one thing that's just like, amazing that you've actually done that right from the get-go with your clients, is that you've given them the full details. And I guess, if we're giving all of that information and someone wants to go to direct, they're not a fit for our business anyway. So good luck to them, I say.
But with that comes a lot of risk, right? Like, I've definitely had conversations with people before. You've either got sort of customers and brands that are dealing with a local packaging company, and working directly with them who are maybe manufacturing locally or outsourcing. Or you've got those brands that do go direct to China, and they do get a really competitive priced product. But that comes with a lot of risk, right? When we're talking about medical devices or meats or cheese or food or beverages or cosmetics, going direct, while the price may stack up, it comes with its own, hurdles to be aware of, right?
Yeah. I mean, in my role with S&P Consultancy, I've been working with businesses and actually analysing and testing their products, because they've come to me and said, hey, we've got a lot of problems, can you help me out? And some of them have been buying direct, some of them have been from local suppliers, but again, those local suppliers are actually buying from offshore anyway, because they don't actually have a manufacturing footprint. Similar to Revo, don't have a local manufacturing footprint unless we're working with someone local, but it's that product and it's imported in the same as anybody else. But then, depending on who the supplier is and the credibility is, are they actually following the guidelines of what you've said that you want? And that's another point as well, where on all of your specifications, you detail every single thing that you want in detail, down to the type of PET you want, the type of PE you want, the type of polypropylene that's used. You're not just saying, LDPE, this, being any grade. You're specifying the grade that's required, which is unique as well from anyone I've worked with. And so you're saying, hey, no, it's got to be this to the suppliers. So you're actually getting the product that you say you want, because everybody knows that people do try and cut costs, right? And it's just everywhere in manufacturing, you try and make the gauge slightly thinner, or you just swap a product out. If you have to, or you can, you might just try and cheapen it up. But then that can cause issues further down the track. And this is what I've worked with a couple of clients on. I'm getting their products fully tested, and then all of a sudden they're going, hey, we've been buying this product 3-4 times, and all of a sudden we got our products not lasting its 6 months shelf life like it's supposed to. Can you look at it for us? And then, I get it all tested and go, oh, sorry, the barrier's been changed to a medium barrier. The EVOH percentage they're using, or the nylon percentage they're using, has all been dropped. And they've only done it to make it cheaper, but they haven't told the end client, and it's not giving them the result.
So there's a lack of transparency around the changing of materials. And like you said, from your experience, it's not till you get things under the microscope and there's actually an issue at hand, or there's a recall happening, that you start to analyse the makeup of the material and the packaging, and you look and go, hey, this sample here is different to this sample here. While aesthetically it might not look different, under the microscope it does. You talked about, I think earlier, about a $100 piece of meat in a $1 bag. This is the classic example, right, of, we can get unit cost packaging down to, cents. But when we're talking about recall, right, per unit, that cost adds up, and it's a pretty scary, road that people have to go down.
Yeah, and that's, products all need to be tested and trialled and made sure, that you actually got the right packaging that you're using, and that is the packaging that you're actually getting right through the whole process as well.
I suppose even too, like when there are issues, when you are going direct to suppliers, anywhere in the world, whether it's, China, Southeast Asia, Germany, Europe, you sort of lose that layer of, quality control as well, don't you? And if, anything does happen in the process once your packaging's delivered, like, versus dealing with a local packaging supplier, like not Revo in this case, or dealing with someone like Revo, you're like, there are relationships in place that have been built over time. So when things do happen, there's a little bit more of a safety net there, isn't there? And you're more likely to sort of get a positive outcome. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And I guess, the network that you've built as well there, and the different people that you work with the quality control team in China, actually gives that extra layer of, I guess, comfortability or support that you've got there. You can send someone in straight away to check a product.
Yeah.
Any new products being run, how you facilitated that and got in your process there where they check it off, they make sure it's right. That actually all really helps out and gives that, that extra comfort, I guess, for anyone that's buying your packaging.
Peace of mind.
Yeah, peace of mind versus buying it direct and hoping that they get the colour right, hoping that they get this right.
That's kind of how I've always thought of Revo in my head, and how I kind of describe it to, new potential customers as well. It's like working with Revo is like the benefit of working with a local packaging supplier, like a traditional local packaging supplier, in terms of knowledge, quality control and safety net, but with the benefit of, the price that you would get from going direct. And so it's like kind of the best of both worlds, right? You get the local service, you get the knowledge, the know-how, the security, the network, but you also get the best priced packaging. And that's kind of how I always explain it to people, whether they're approaching it via one of those mediums, whether they're going direct or working locally. I always try and sort of, describe how we sort of play into both those spheres, if you will. Just in terms of like, we've talked a lot about transparency, honesty, sustainability around packaging. Like, how important is the Revo ethos to you? Just touching on what we've been speaking about, like how does it align with your, your personal values and beliefs in terms of, how you conduct yourself in business and leadership?
Yeah, well, it's a tough one, I guess. But I guess it's just being upfront and honest about things, right from the get-go with the way it's all done. And I really like the fact with the plastic tax or the packaging for good tax that's applied as well, that there is the opportunity to do better as well, like to help things out, to look at, as you mentioned processes and stuff earlier as well about different products and stuff. And that's sort of, I know that's where you want looking to fund some of that money into, if that packaging for good fund, is how you can put it into developing new products and improving the use of plastics or reducing the use of plastics and looking at alternatives, which, actually sort of in my mindset, I think, well, this is actually working. I feel that that's part of what I want to be involved in. And that's why I've sort of said I'll come on board, because I actually see that there is the potential there of, giving back and helping, but also being honest and upfront with everything at the start of it. And, not changing suppliers, not doing anything like that, not changing packaging without telling customers.
So let's talk about the plastic tax. And I've called it the Packaging for Good Fund, but, I continue to drive that it is a plastic tax.
Yep.
And those two words, there's sort of a negative feel around both those words. When you think plastic, that's a naughty word. It's a negative sort of sense to it.
Yeah.
And tax, one of the only things that's guaranteed in life. But when I put those two words together, I think it's really important to the mission and what we do as a business. But I want to ask for your input. Like, why do you think it's been such a challenge for me and Revo as a business so far to get people to engage with it and to get sort of involvement around the plastic tax? Because I just didn't think it'd be so hard to give money away when we started to accrue it in the fund. And, it really has been an uphill battle. And I feel like we're starting to make waves now. We've got recipients on board and we've got more to announce. But it was a really hard slog at the start. What's your perspective?
Well, I think it's that whole, what do they say, big pharma, but it's not. It's big oil in this case.
Yeah.
Revo is not big oil, but it's considered you're using plastic. So it's, and I think the conception there, when you've told me some of the stories, I've had a chuckle to myself about it really, is it's like, it's taking money from the big evil of the plastics or the, world to support their process, and they're anti-plastics or something, or they, as a business or the way they operate is like, no, we don't like plastics. We're trying to clean plastics up. We're doing this. We're sustainable, this or that. So we're trying to make sure it works properly. And then, but they don't want to take it. And it's like, well, hey, this is actually going to help your process. And I think that's why, but it's, I guess it's that understanding of it. But hey, we're actually all here trying to make it better, because, plastics are here. They're going to be here for a lot longer until alternatives come around. But we can help you try and reduce the plastic going to waste, or help you find alternatives for the use of plastic So let's just, why won't you use this fund? And it's really, it's quite a laughable thing. But the connotations of it, plastic, it's like you're the devil, you sell plastics. And then you say tax as well. It's like, oh my God, the tax man. Everybody hates the tax man. It's just got those, it's like going to the dentist, the murder house, when you're at primary school, you got to go to the murder house. It's that same connotation that people have around plastic, And then,
and I mean, to your point as well, like that's why we've always been really upfront with it. So like, obviously, as you now know, as you've come into the business, like we charge the tax upfront on every invoice that's sent to the customer. So it's not sort of a flat rate amount that we sort of keep, tucked away. It's on every invoice that goes to every one of our customers. So, at any point throughout the fiscal year, the business year, if a customer wants to look at all of their invoices, they can actually see, okay, this is how much we've, paid in terms of our plastic tax. Not to mention we update our customers on a quarterly basis as to how much they've accrued. But that was really important to us because the last thing we wanted to do was, hey, say this is what we're doing and not actually be doing it. I always wanted our customers to be able to hold us accountable. So that when the year is up, we reflect on the year that's been and talk about the successes and the hard times and the good times, and we look, speak to it on a holistic level with each customer. Hey, this is what you've accrued over the year. They can actually validate that on their side too. So it's just all part of that, adding credibility to what we're doing. And we don't want to be labelled as, greenwashing or sort of saying that we're doing things that we're not. We really want to be, true to our word, and really walk the walk, I guess you could say, with that plastic tax.
Yeah, it's just fantastic what you're doing with it. And I love how you say it's the play-to-play philosophy.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. You want to use plastics, you got to pay to play. Brilliant.
Could you see the government trying to engage or impose something similar to what we're trying to do on a much bigger scale? Like, I know that's a general sort of question, but
Yep, definitely as levies and stuff like that, and there is actually stuff like that being worked on, but that is just to handle the waste. Basically, it's like a waste levy. Almost, that's all it is. It's not sort of like to look at developing other things, not looking to have infrastructure. They're not going to be putting all of that money into recycling of the product. It's just going into the waste minimisation fund. And it's just, I don't know how they'll be looking at different ways to charge it. I'm not sure how they'll be doing that. But yeah, it'll be a levy per tonne, per kilo, per bag. I don't know. But everyone will be looking at it because they're just trying to figure out how they can get rid of the waste.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, like, people may look and say, well, you're profiting off plastic, but I really want to highlight that we are trying to do some good with the 2% plastic tax. And to your point before about funny stories, I've sort of told you, I've literally had conversations where people have said, we don't want your blood money, or, you're no good here.
Yeah.
But, I enjoy those conversations because, we're having them. And I think it's important, to put ourselves out there and really try and do something in this space. Like I said, I think it's the first plastic tax that's come to light in New Zealand.
Yeah,
I'm sure someone will challenge me on that if that's not the case. But
I pretty much
we wanted to make a splash
right.
with it. Like, if you're making it, you need to be doing something about it at the other end as well. Because if investment in infrastructure is what we need, where's that money going to come from? Like, it has to be supplier driven. New businesses that are coming out, with new ways of doing things, they have to be innovative in that approach. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. And in 10 years, there'll be more alternatives on the market available, and we still won't have the solutions. And that's just the conversation that I'm sick of having, to be honest. I'm ready to put my money, or other people's money, should I say, that would otherwise be profit, where our mouth is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great concept. And you talk about the alternatives and other alternatives available. I mean, there's some fantastic stuff here, but it's can they scale, and can they actually supply, and will they give the shelf life that's required without adding any other nasties to it? Having no PFAS, no PFOS, anything like that in the product to give it this. Say, hey, yeah, we've changed to a fibre, but it's got a plastic lining in it, or it's got a barrier lining on the inside. But what's in that barrier lining? Has that got PFAS or PFOA in it? So that's, it's not really changing it, not making it any better.
And that's where sort of the conversation around greenwashing comes, right?
Yeah.
Made to look and feel green, but is it really? And that's kind of what we want to avoid. Just be upfront, open, honest and transparent about everything. And be able to let our customer base hold us accountable, because we truly believe in everything that we say and do. Well, we've got some exciting things coming up, obviously, first of which being, you coming on board as our managing director, but obviously we've got new recipients to announce through the Packaging for Good Fund in the coming weeks, month.
Yep.
So really excited to obviously, be able to promote those new partnerships.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with the guys you said you've lined up. It's going to be exciting.
And obviously not to mention, launching our refill partnership drive. So
Yep.
that's been a project that's been quite dear to my heart because from the very beginning, I wanted to have that impact part of what we do as a packaging supplier with the plastic tax, but I wanted to drive other innovation as well. And I wanted to always be able to firmly stand on stage and say, yes, we sell plastic for various reasons into businesses where it's absolutely needed, but we're doing things in other realms as well. And I think there's a really huge opportunity to promote, install and engage refill solutions with shops, stores and supermarkets.
100%. Refill is part of the future. Has to be.
We're also announcing a new scholarship with one of New Zealand's top universities. Obviously can't announce that right now, but that's on the cusp of signing on the dotted line, which is an amazing opportunity to be able to, give back to, the future, innovators that are going to come up and show us how to do things even better.
Yep.
We did the Kickstart competition last year. Obviously, I'm sure you would have seen that on social media where we were helping startups and new businesses kind of find their feet in the world of packaging and start to have conversations with supermarkets. So obviously looking to bring that back. Are you excited to get involved in that?
Oh, 100%. I love working with new brands and trying new things and just seeing how stuff goes. It's awesome.
An obvious one, we're off to China.
Yeah, excited. Looking forward to going and meeting all of your suppliers.
I've actually never been to China before, so this will be my first time. I know you've been to China before in your previous roles. It won't be your first trip there.
Yep.
Any advice for someone that's going there for the first time, other than brush up on my, language?
Oh, just keep your eyes open because it may not be what you're there to see that you see that's going to be the next innovation. You can change the market in New Zealand with something that you see.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite an eye-opening experience for me. I mean, I've been to Korea, I've been to other parts of Asia, but never to China. So I'm excited just to see the scale of it and just to even go to the supermarkets there and see what packaging they're using, see what products they're using, even see some of the Kiwi export products that we've talked about, on shop shelves and just kind of see how they take to, New Zealand product. I think quite exciting as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things is when you're traveling is actually seeing product from home, and just seeing it there and just going, wow, that it's in, especially if it's in your packaging, you'd be like, hey, this is part of my journey to get to here. Now I see it here.
A real sense of pride, I guess you could say.
Yeah, but it's the same with any product you see from, your home country. You go, wow, this is pretty cool, especially in some, place that's way in the middle of nowhere sort of thing. You go, wow, this is cool.
Obviously, we've got a plan to, shoot a lot of content while we're away, sort of day-to-day processes of how packaging's made, even just understanding, working with businesses overseas in China, learning everything around the customs and traditions and culture. Are you excited to get involved and step in front of the camera? Yeah,
definitely. It's going to be, a total different way of doing things from how I've started in this packaging industry, but looking forward to embracing new things and seeing how it all goes.
I'm excited just about to make sense of it all too. Obviously, it'll be my first time there. I've got a lot of the technical knowledge, but just seeing how things work on the shop floor, factory floor, I think will be really enlightening. So I can't wait. We're obviously looking to maybe do more podcasts this year as well. So I know you've got some technical talks up your sleeve, which you're quite keen to get involved in. I'm looking to talk to our customers around the customer journey, stories about grit, growth, resilience, and, lessons learned from some of our clients. So I'm sure, you would agree with me here that, if anyone does want to, speak to us or have some subject matter that they want to talk to,
just reach out.
Just reach out.
Yep.
I believe we've got a phone number and an email for you now.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yep. Steffan@revopackaging.com.
Yeah, and just my phone number, 027 474 2942.
Steffan, it's been great chatting to you. I'm looking forward to, partnering with you and, forging a new path forward with Revo and creating more impact. And, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Lane. I really appreciate it. And thanks for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to working with you and trying to move the business, scale it up.
Sounds good, Dad.
Thanks, mate.